Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm delighted that Rob Cohen has been able to join us this morning. Rob works with a number of universities, including Oxford Brookes, to talk to students about his experience, both sort of climbing, building his own business, etc. And as an employer, the sort of skills he's looking for when he's interviewing for graduates. I don't need to tell you what's going on in the world and how, the economies are getting more and more tricky. Okay, the big firms' revenues are dropping. I don't want this to scare anybody, but it's going to be tough later this year when you start going for graduate jobs. It's not just your cohort here at Brookes, or don't think, Reading and Nottingham, Sheffield. There's master's students, there's apprenticeships, all vying for probably a pretty limited number of jobs. You guys are here. So, Woody Allen said 80%, 90% of success is showing up. So you're here. So it puts you ahead. But please, listen to what Rob has to say. And over to you. Hope that scared them enough.
Morning, everyone. Can you all hear me well? Yeah, good. As Elaine said, thanks for turning up. Very much appreciated. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, bit of a graveyard shift. So, 27th of Feb, 2022, that's the day. Let's see if we can have a bit of a positive influence on at least one of your lives. And we can look back on today and hopefully I would have influenced you or given you something to go home with or something to think about. So first of all, hands up, anyone that's seen me, heard of me, knows of me. Brilliant. That's not one person in the room, which is great news because it means my message will be even more powerful and a better one for all of you. So I'm going to talk you through my journey, my life, my career, what's brought me here today. And then we're going to go through what's going on in the market currently and focus on you about what your journey is or what hopefully your journey is going to be. Morning. And one of the most important things for me is the Q&A that we're going to do at the end, because actually, you're right? Good. Thanks for coming. So one of the most important things is the Q&A at the end, because I really want to answer your questions. Morning, guys. All good? I really want to answer your questions because that's what adds most value to the rest of the room. So really, really appreciate you thinking about now anything that I say as we're speaking. Think about the questions you want to ask. I've driven 2 hours here to be here, and I've got to drive 2 hours back. So that's 4 hours of my time and another hour with you. So that's 5 hours. So I'd really appreciate that there's some good engagement because I'm only here for you. There's no benefit for me. I just want to help you in your lives and your careers. So have a think about that, especially with the Q&A. So my journey, I come from an immigrant family. What does that mean? My grandparents were born in Eastern and Central Europe. They were very fortunate enough that the UK allowed them to come into the country as immigrants, and my grandparents were able to raise my mum and my dad. Both of my grandparents' sides were immigrants, and they grew up in East London, doing a lot of manual labor and low-paid jobs. And luckily enough, me and my sister were born many years later. And my parents made it very clear to me that there wasn't any financial support growing up, but we had a roof, we had food, we had morals, we had values, but that was more or less it. Everything else that I was going to achieve in life was going to be down to me. And I'm not telling you because that's some kind of tragic, feel sorry for me story. It's probably the luckiest thing that ever happened to me, because at the age of 7 or 8, I had to go out and get a paper round and wash cars and cut lawns and gardens. So I had to do all of these jobs just to get some money, because if I wanted things for myself, I had to work, and that was the only way I was going to do it. So at a very young age, I'd learned or been forced to learn the skill of working. And having a work ethic is one of the most basic things ever in life. There is nothing that you can achieve moving forward without the basis of a work ethic. It's fundamental to everything. Now, I didn't want to be doing all those things at the age of 7, at the age of 8, but I was forced to do so because of my family situation, and that's okay. It's completely cool. At the age of 11, I went to a school in Camden. Hands up if you've heard of Camden. Been there? So it's like a bit gentrified, a bit cool nowadays with the market and so on. Great place to buy rubbish. But back in the 80s, when I was going to school, very long time ago, it was something called an inner city slum. I don't know if you've studied that, if you know what that is, but it wasn't a good place to be. And I was the smallest boy in the school in the first year at the age of 11, whatever first year is nowadays, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is. And I went there with my little blue uniform, and we were called the Smurfs because there were lots of little blue uniform kids running around Camden, if you know what the Smurfs are. And that was my school of life. Why was it the school of life? Because at school, we were chased, bullied, robbed. The playground, we had bricks and bottles flying over every day. And that's what school life was like in an inner city slum in London. And what I learned from that experience, again, nothing to feel sorry about. What I learned is a 6th and 7th sense of everything that's going on around me in the real world. So when you got off the bus and you realized there were people waiting for you, you smelt it, you saw it. And so when you had to run, you ran. And although that sounds maybe a little scary, or maybe it doesn't sound like the life that you want to grow up to live, or maybe if you have children one day for them to live, actually, it's the real world. You know, this is the environment that we live in. This is the social impact of maybe what we're going through now, cost of living, different demographics, different social backgrounds and classes. And these are the challenges that we have to face in the society that we live in. Not a great thing. At the same time, it's real, and that's the world that we live in. So I lived in this interesting environment from the age of 11, where my social skills advanced rapidly because of this dynamic of going to school in a city slum, in a tough environment, I would say. At the age of 15, 16, at the back end of my GCSEs at school, we had to do a summer intern. And during my summer intern, I got offered a place in a property company. Now, when I say I got offered a place in a property company, it wasn't that straightforward. For about a week, I went home with this book. It's called The Yellow Pages. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. You probably wouldn't have seen it. So it was this thing like this thick with about 10,000 telephone numbers, because we didn't have internet in those days working the way it does today. So I had to go through this book, The Yellow Pages, some crazy encyclopedia, and phone up hundreds of companies with my squeaky little voice saying, could I please have a job? I'm looking for a summer intern. Out of 1 week of calls and hundreds and hundreds, I got asked to go in and see 2 companies, to which one company offered me £20 a week, and another company offered me £50 a week. So obviously I took the one that was paying the most. I didn't have anything. So I had 2 options, £20, £50. And the £50 a week company was in Wembley. So hopefully everyone knows Wembley. Also back in the day, pretty rough area. There's a few estates there. Stonebridge Park is one of the top 3 estates in the whole of the United Kingdom for crime. And that's where I started my, what I would call, apprenticeship. At the end of that summer, the company I was working for said to me, we really like you. Would you like to stay on, and we'll offer you a permanent job? And I basically went home and I said to my mum, I don't think I'm going to go back and do my A-levels. I'm just going to work. Now, just imagine you going home and telling your parents that. My mum flipped. She said, you need to study, you need an education, you need a degree, you need a career, you need to do something that we weren't so lucky to do and your grandparents weren't so lucky to do. Generally, I don't listen to what my parents tell me to do. So actually, I'm more inclined to do the opposite of what my parents tell me to do. Morning. And so I said to my mom, I want to work, I want to earn money. She said to me, your life, do what you want, slammed the door, walked out. And that was the start of my career in property. So I started working in Wembley. I was doing valuations, lettings, sales, management, everything and anything. And it's the first time I'd been thrown into dealing with the general public, more than my car washing and my newspaper round. And so I had to do lots of cold calling, lots of phoning, trying to take on properties, dealing with problems. And I was very lucky within that first role because, again, like when I tried to get the intern, I was given files and files and files of properties. And my job was to call each property and say, do you want to sell your house? Do you want to rent your house? Do you need management services, et cetera, et cetera? So what that did, it broke down any taboos or any concerns I had with actually speaking and communicating. And ultimately, as a skill, speaking and communicating is massively important, whether we like it or not. And to progress anywhere in a career or in life, that's something that you need to do. We need to communicate, we need to talk, we need to be comfortable, we need to build relationships. These are all the soft skills that are required in life, full stop. Forget about a career or a job or wherever you go next. That basic ingredient is essential. So whether you're working in a Costa or a Starbucks or any job that allows you to communicate with the public and build up your relationship skills, it's really important. That's going to serve you really well moving forward. So during this period, we are now in the 90s. Early 90s was an interesting time. 93, 30 years from now, which is when I just started. We had something called 92, 93. We had Black Monday, or Black Tuesday, it could have been back then. It was the UK's exit from the ERM. Anyone know what the ERM is? No? Anyone want to have a guess? So the ERM was the exchange rate mechanism for the Eurozone back in the day, before it became the Eurozone and the Euro currency. And we were part of that in the UK. And what it meant was the pound traded against the franc or the Deutschmark or the peseta. And it was a trading platform for currencies for everyone to trade equally together, like the euro is today. John Major was the prime minister, and the UK was in the depth of a recession, deep recession, probably the worst recession I've seen in my career. And the housing market had collapsed. We were in something called negative equity. Does anyone understand what that is? Heard of it? No. So negative equity, and it's quite pertinent to what's happening now, is where someone's property is worth less than what they owe. What does that mean? So when you get a property, you get a mortgage or you borrow money. So let's say you buy a property for £120,000. You won't get much for that. And you borrow £100,000. When the property value changes, so let's say it goes from 120 to 80, you still owe the bank 100,000. So it means you're minus 20 in what it's worth compared to what you owe. Negative equity. Okay? So half the UK was in negative equity. The market had crashed. People owed more money than their properties were worth. What did that lead to? Major repossessions, receiverships, people being kicked out of their homes. It was a savage market. So going back to the ERM, that's the exchange rate mechanism. Our economy was on its knees. The UK government took the decision to leave the ERM, and interest rates shot up on that day, something like, 15%. So if you're aware of everything that's going on with interest rates in the last year and how they've gone from virtually nothing to base rate at 4%, to mortgage rates broadly at 5 or 6%, compared to where they were a year and a half ago, where you could maybe get a mortgage at 1%, that means your payments are triple, quadruple what they would have been. So back in the day, 30 years ago, the same thing happened. Mortgage rates were like 5%, and then they went up to 15%, and the country was on its knees. It was a bad market, and that's where I started. I was selling properties in London for 60, 70,000 pounds, and you couldn't get rid of them for love nor money. The same property today would be worth 7, 8, 900,000 pounds. So in that period of time, incredible growth. But the market was in a really, really bad place. So as my career moves on, I meet a guy one day and he says to me, "Rob, what are you doing with your life?" This is where you all come into it. And I looked at him. He was an Irish guy. Irish called John, actually. He had a property portfolio. So he rented out his properties and I managed them for him. He goes, "Rob, you seem like a sensible guy. What are you doing with your life?" And I looked at him and I said, like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "What are you doing with your life?" And I wanted to say, well, it's none of your business. I do whatever I want with my life. I didn't have an answer. I said, "I'm really happy. I'm doing really well. I'm earning some good money." He goes, "You need a career." Okay? He goes, "You need a career." He goes, "You need to become a chartered surveyor." I looked at him and said, oh, thanks. It's really nice of you. So anyway, I go home that day and I tell my mum, I said, Mum, I met a guy today. And he said, I need to become a chartered surveyor. And so my mum goes, oh, that's interesting. So I don't think anything of it. The next day, like any good mum, when I come home, my mum says, I've phoned every university in England, and there are 2 courses that you can do, one at South Bank and one at Westminster, and you can start in September. So I spoke to my company that I was working for. They wrote to the university because you had to get a recommendation. The university, morning. The university accepted me and I got to do a 5-year building surveying degree at Westminster University, which was exciting at the beginning, like the first week. And then I realized that there was a 5-year journey and it was pretty demoralizing. I'm not a good student, just to make it super clear. That doesn't give everyone the opportunity not to be a good student either, but I'm just not a good student. And so I'm going to these lectures and I'm in year 1 and I've got another 4 to go after this. I'm not doing very well in my grades. I play football twice a week. I watch Arsenal twice a week. I have a social life, possibly had a girlfriend, family, full-time job. I literally didn't sleep because I didn't want to sacrifice all of those things. I love my work. I love playing football. I love going out with my friends. I love partying. I loved everything I was doing, and I didn't want to stop anything. So I just didn't sleep for 5 years. Now, that comes with a health warning. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend that you leave here today and says, Rob says don't sleep for the next 5 years. That's the way to do everything. I was all right with it. I could deal with it, right? Didn't make a difference to me. I was so motivated and hungry to do everything. I just did it. It didn't bother me doing my university work at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning and Red Bulling up until there was no Red Bull left. I mean, it didn't bother me. Obviously, that's not tremendously healthy and it's not a good way to live life. But I'm just sharing with you, that's how I want to live my life. And I was okay with it. It's important that you understand what you can do and what you can't do. If you're working and you feel that it's affecting your health or your way of being, then you've got to think about that and look after yourself. I was hungry and motivated to succeed, and my body could deal with it. So I just did. So I want to be a bit careful there, because I got through my journey that way, but that doesn't mean it's the right way for all of you. You've got to listen to yourself and understand what you can and what you can't do. So my degree, so painful, like so painful. I don't know how many of you feel the way that I felt, but it was just painful sitting in a lecture room on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock, listening to some random guy talk about his life. I mean, that was painful for me. Painful, right? And I didn't want to be there. I wasn't very good at anything, but I understood that I just had to do it. Like I was, I understood that if I wanted to qualify or have a career or become a surveyor or be MRICS, I had to get the degree because it was a means of getting further in my career. How many of you here are thinking about becoming a surveyor or qualifying as MRICS one day? Hands up. Most of you. Anyone who's absolutely got no interest in that path, hands up. Be good to hear. Tell me, what are you thinking? Just so I understand what's going on in your heads. Sorry, a little bit louder. What's your name? You don't fancy doing it. What's your name? Yeah. Jasper. You don't fancy doing it because it's a pain like this and it's more just like more years wasted. You don't fancy coming to surveyor. And yourself? Neither do you. Listen, I'm not here sponsored by Oxford Brookes University tell you that become a surveyor, it's the greatest thing that you're ever going to do in life. And all the answers to all your problems and challenges in life are going to be solved by becoming a surveyor. For sure not. But I definitely am here to say that actually there's a decent career to be made out of it. And it's served me very well. So I get to the end of my degree, and let me tell you, this is how bad I am, just to prove it. I get to my thesis, and I had to get 50% in my thesis just to get a 2-2 in my degree. I mean, I'm bad. I mean, seriously, I'm really bad. And I did it on the Manchester regeneration, which is what Manchester City Stadium is today, the football stadium. And I kid you not, to this day, I got 50% in that. And I only got 50% because they felt sorry for me. Like the tutors felt sorry for me, like poor Rob's turning up every week. He's not engaged. His marks are terrible. I reckon they sat in a room and they said, you know what? What's the difference in us giving him 50% or 45%? It's not changing anyone's lives. So let's just give him 50% so he can get his 2-2 and get his degree. And so I get my degree, like bad grade, whatever, but I got it somehow. Went to the graduation, very proud moment, the first person in my family in history to actually get a degree. So my parents were there and it was an amazing moment. And then I moved on to the next part of my journey. And the next part of my journey was really special. So I wanted to work for one of the big boys. I've been working for many years now. I'd gone through this 5-year degree. And at that time, the big firms were CBRE, Knight Frank, Savills, Cushman Wakefield, Jones Lang, JLL. Have you heard of them, most of them? So I wanted to live the dream. I wanted to work for one of the big firms. So I wrote to all of them. I begged and begged and begged and begged for an interview. I forced my way literally through the door, literally said to directors, just give me 5 minutes, meet me. They obviously didn't fancy me much, got bad grades, went to Westminster. It's not like going to Oxford Brookes and getting a first or a 2-1. You know, I was at the real bottom of the pile. But I had good work experience and I was able to communicate. I got a reasonable energy and positivity. So I always thought if I could get in front of someone, I might have a chance. So in the end, a few people met me. And when I went to the interviews, I literally said the following. I'll do anything to work for you. Even if I have to work for free, I'll take the job. Like, just give me a chance to prove that I can add value and add worth. And eventually CBRE gave me a job, and they gave me a job in their valuations team. Now, the valuations team and work definitely isn't the most exciting one that you grow up dreaming of. One day, I want to be a valuer. Like, no one does. It's not glamorous. It's not appealing. It's just not something that you think, yeah, that's the dream. But at the same time, I've been very lucky and made a career out of valuation. And I probably work on the really good side of the valuation industry. I do prime, super prime valuation across Europe. At CBRE, I got sent to Spain, got sent to Portugal. I go and see luxury homes in Ibiza and Mallorca. I get to go to Pacha the night after the inspection. So I get to live a good life, even if I'm double your age or triple your age. Ibiza's quite good for all ages. And so I grew a specialism in prime, super prime residential property across Europe. I did that very well at CBRE. And then 17 years ago, I set up a company called MJ Group, which I'll talk about in a minute. At CBRE, I started my APC, the beautiful path to become a chartered surveyor, to which I started in planning and development. But because I got my position, I was in the valuation team, I switched to valuation just because CBRE said it's an easier route. Because I was able to start my APC in my last year of my degree. I don't know if it's still the same, maybe not. Because I was like in a part-time path. Because I was working, I could do my last year before I qualified, before I got my degree, and then qualify afterwards. So I went down the residential route at CBRE and managed to qualify first time. Very lucky, definitely really lucky. And again, parents really proud. It was probably one of the best moments of my life, qualifying, because you've gained a title, a very prestigious chartership, like becoming a lawyer or a solicitor or an accountant. A chartered surveyor is a chartered ship, and it's very prestigious and very renowned across the world. So I was really proud to have this. And then I phoned the Irish guy because I'd always thought about him for years. It took me 7 years from the day of him telling me to qualify. And I'd always had him in the back of my mind. Like, imagine if I hadn't met this random guy and I hadn't have gone down this journey and path. And so found his number, called him up. He was living in Bournemouth. And I say, John, it's Rob. Do you remember me? I used to manage your properties in Wembley. He goes, kind of, not really, no. I go, well, just wanted to tell you, I did everything you told me. I just qualified and now I'm a chartered surveyor. And I wanted to thank you for sending me on the right direction. And he goes, Rob, I'm really busy. I've got to go. And put the phone down. And it was a real sad ending for me because like someone had influenced me and changed my life. Maybe I wouldn't be standing here today trying to have a positive message for you if it wasn't for that. That's life, moments, opportunities, sliding doors, and so on. So I got my chartership. I became a chartered surveyor. I have to tell you that when you qualify, it's not the end, it's the beginning. Like the first day of your career is the day that you qualify. Everything you do before is like free, because once you've qualified and you've got your letters and you've got the title, then you have a responsibility. You have to engage and perform in a professional way and share all of the values and the guidelines that are required as a chartered surveyor. Once you've qualified, I'll tell everyone in the room, once you've qualified, you have a job for life somewhere in planet Earth, okay? Now, it might not be the best job. It might not be exciting. It might not be what you've dreamed for. It might not be fun, but it's a secure job for life that if you have any issues or any challenges and you fall on hard times for whatever reason, it will pay relatively well and it's a career. I think that's one big message I want to leave for today, is that you understand just getting over the line by hook or by crook like me gives you the opportunity to do something and have a career and a job which maybe will pay better than some other industries and some other areas. Even as your worst default position, if you hate property, hate surveying, hate the industry, that's something to think about. Okay, so my life in CBRE goes really well. I get to work for ExxonMobil, Esso, heard of them? So I was head of their development and growth in Iberia, Spain and Portugal, which sounds very exotic and a great title. Basically, it's building petrol stations. But it was fun, traveled all over Spain and Portugal doing that. Then I get to the point at CBRE where I'd been really profitable in that department, the highest profiting department that year. And I said to CBRE, what have you got planned for me for my future? I'm working really hard and dedicated, I'm motivated. What have you got lined up for me? And they basically didn't really have an answer. They said, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And I said, what about career progression, bonus, anything? And kind of like not. So I just said to my director that day, I just said, well, if there's no future here, really, I'm done. I'm going to leave because I always need something to work forward to. And if someone's not able to communicate what my future is, then that's not good for me. So I quit on the spot, set up MJ Group, and 17 years later, MJ Group is probably the leading prime, super prime valuers in the space, competing directly with Savills, Knight Frank, Cushman, JLL, etc., which I'm very proud of. I created what I would call moral and ethical business, which is probably the hardest thing that you could ever try to do. Back in the crash in 08, 09, if everyone remembers Lehman's, I don't know how old you were, young, 10. Well, in 08, 09, when Lehman's crashed, everyone lost their jobs, the economy crashed. And basically, I had to go back into homes that I'd valued at 10 million that were only worth 5 million. And people had lost their livelihood, their wealth, everything. And I was the person going into these properties and they were scared and they thought the banks were going to take the properties off them, which they were. And basically, I realized that day that I had a moral responsibility. And maybe it was my fault that some of them had lost so much money because of the valuation process, which was a bit complicated. So I said, I'm not going to work the same way as everyone else. I want to do something a bit different. And that's how I created a moral and ethical business. It's not easy. It's going against the grain. It's virtually in a gentleman's club, sorry to say, but that's the, historically, it is a gentleman's club with bureaucracy, barriers to entry. Doesn't mean it's not changing. My wife is a superstar. She's in the industry. She's one of the best females out there, and she's like 100 times better than me. And she's with one of the big firms, so the opportunities are there. But everyone has to take their own path. That's a very short story of a 30-year career. One of the biggest messages I want to share with you before we go to 10 minutes of Q&A is that it's very clear that I don't have a lot about me, okay? I'm not smart. I come from a poor social background. I got a very weak education. At the same time, I'm very motivated. I've got a good work ethic. I'm very hungry. I've got a lot of persistence. I'm very determined. I never want to give up. And based on a lot of those soft skills, so maybe I've got a strength in EQ, emotional intelligence, and I've got very little IQ, hence my 2-2, or probably a third. And so I think it's important that you all understand that actually behavior, relationships, emotional intelligence, soft skills can probably give you more value than maybe the grade in your actual intelligence that you have. And if you've got both, then you're laughing. So I really want to push that. There are no barriers to entry actually for you. You can go straight into LinkedIn and DM anyone in planet Earth and engage. They may say no, they may not respond, they may ignore you. But if you did it 1,000 times, you'll get some responses. So don't feel sorry for yourself. Oh, everything's so difficult, never going to get a job. It's the worst economy ever. Like, that's just rubbish. I mean, if you want to tell yourself in your head, great. It's just not true. It's rubbish. That's a mindset thing. You could also watch the news every day and think we're in the worst position economically in the history of mankind. That's also not true. Actually, what's more important is where you are in your head. Are you positive and offensive, or negative and defensive? That's your choice. You wake up every morning with that choice. I wake up this morning on my 5-hour round trip thinking today's a positive day. I might change one person's life. And in 30 years from now, someone might call me and say, Rob, remember that day in Oxford Brookes? I built an empire. And I'll say, no. So there are a lot of messages here. Your generation probably has the greatest opportunity in the history of most generations: data, tech, all the diversification in the industry, and the new facets of what property and real estate is going to look like moving forward. Your opportunity, ESG, is huge. And no one from the previous generations is going to have the outlook and foresight that you're going to have in the opportunities that are going to come your way. All right, we must do some Q&A, so please, you've got to throw some questions at me. First person, hands. I'm not leaving here without questions. What's your name? Joe. I wasn't at CBRE long, actually. It's a good question. I was only there for like 3 years. It was the #1 real estate company on planet Earth. Loved working there. Brilliant company. I'm an entrepreneur. Just want to do business. Just want to work with people. It was a bit restrictive for me, but the best learning in the world. What's your name? Lottie. Hey. Spain, Italy, Portugal, Gibraltar, and the UK. But I could do my job anywhere on planet Earth. That's what the opportunity. One of my biggest regrets is I had a chance to go to New York at CBRE, and I didn't take it. And like to this day, I'm happy with my journey, my career. Probably should have gone to New York. I was a bit scared because I'm quite soft as a person. And I thought I was going to get beaten up because they're so aggressive there, the Americans. And I thought I was a bit too scared for it, but I probably should have done it. What's your name? Ollie. Yeah, Ollie. Does MG2? Yes, we do. Only a few. I would say it's quite a tough graduate program at MG Group. It's a bit like my journey in my life, not beautifully structured like CBRE and Knight Frank and Savills, where everything's laid on a plate. You've got this lovely journey. Like, get out there, measure a property, and you get thrown in right at the deep end. Some people love that, love the chaos and the uncertainty. Some people can't deal with it. So some grads have worked really well, and some grads have failed miserably because of that. Next question. What's your name? John? Jabal. So, if anyone didn't hear the question, how did I transition from mainstream valuation to prime, super prime? Specialisms are everything, okay? So, after 30 years, 100,000 hours, 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, I'm probably one of the leading experts in the space in the country. but that's not because of anything special. That's just because I've wasted 30 years of my life doing it. Specialisms are brilliant, but they take time, and you've got to put I reckon a good 5 to 10 years into a space. I just fell into it. It just was an area that I was working in, and I realized it was high risk. People were too scared to do it because if you get it wrong, you're losing someone millions and millions. But then I just built up the skills and the knowledge to work in that area. I was very open to specialisms, petrol filling stations, working in Europe, super prime, resi. I think you've got to read the trends of where markets are going. I understood that prime, super prime is a growing space because the world gets richer and richer, more billionaires, and those billionaires are going to live somewhere and they're going to buy super prime. So I understood it was a good space to be in into perpetuity. Like that's never ending. Whereas petrol filling stations are going to die out. Yes, they're going to become convenience stores or electric recharge points, but maybe it's not the best place. Energy is a good place. You want to go into energy, it's a great space in the industry. Next question. What's your name? Anthony. When you run your own company, you've got all the pressure of the world on you. Okay, it's all on you. So we've got like 35 employees with their wider families. That's 100 people that you're responsible for. And when you've got bad times, you don't sleep and you're at home at night thinking, how am I paying everyone? And you're responsible for them. You work for them. So everything's on your shoulders. I love that. Like that's exhilarating, it's exciting, but it's not for everyone. It's really not for everyone. The pressures and the stresses of running a business are immense. And it's much better to be a number 5 at Google than a number 1 at MJ Group. I can assure you of that. So sometimes you've got to think about what you're good at. Are you good in the structure and working in a team where someone's telling you what to do? Or you're a bit rogue like me that just wants to get out there and do something special? Like not everyone has the ingredients to do it. So you got to think it may look good and sound great, but if your core skills aren't for that, then it might not be right for you. You over here. There were 3 here actually. I can't remember who it was. What's your name? Elliot. So, I mean, property's in a great place at the moment because there's so much change. The more uncertainty, the more change, the greater the opportunity. So the way the world is going, the way things are moving with energy and ESG and technology and data, it's going to change so dramatically that the mainstream way that we've been working for the last 100 years is just going to get completely thrown out the window. Like the opportunity in the built environment is endless. That's what I fell in love with, actually. I should have said it before, because it's real, it's tangible, it's every single thing around us that you see with your eyes. It's not like when you're on a trading platform, you're trading numbers. You don't really know, like you're trading millions or billions in oil, but you don't really understand anything that you're doing. Whereas in real estate, you see a property that's falling down, or you see this brilliant area that's had a regeneration and so on. So it's real and tangible and never ending. Whether it's a beach in Marbella or skiing or marinas, never ending. Job for life. Your name? Again? You didn't name again, I didn't hear.
Calixta.
Kalitza. Yeah. 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 I think DM. I think I definitely DM on LinkedIn. Like it's impossible that you're reaching out to 1,000 directors at all the big firms and asking for a coffee, it's impossible that you're not going to catch one on the right day that says, oh, yeah, what's it like? It's a really good process. Like being knocked back and failure is such a good process to go through. It's much better. Like for half of you, I'd rather you not get placements and face a bit of suffering and have a challenge. I know it's not what you want. It's probably the worst thing I could ever tell you, but it's probably be the best thing. Like for me in my journey, I've realized that everything I've done is just because I suffered so much and I had to go down a route that wasn't easy. And actually that's where you grow and that's where you develop. 100%, if you don't get positions in the firms that you want, there's no way there isn't a position for everyone out there. You're just going to have to work really hard to find it. You have to persist and persist and persist and persist and persist and persist and keep persisting. Like, what's the alternative? You give up.
I think one more question from Diggory and then better wrap up.
What's your name? Name?
Diggory.
Diggory. This is a really good question for everyone, okay? Big firm, boutique, small practice. So I did the two extremes where I was working in Wembley with the smallest company that you could ever find, a family-run business. And then when I went to CBRE, it's the largest real estate company in the world. What you learn at CBRE is amazing. Everything they do, marketing, brand, image, everything is the best of the best. It's amazing. What you learn in a family business is care and attention, looking after people, responsiveness, being there for your client, going above and beyond, doing everything you can to help. At CBRE, you don't get that. CBRE is just given to you. So when you put the two together, that's where I'm going to answer your question properly, is when I set up the business, I said, if I can do everything like CBRE, but run it like a family business, then it's untouchable. Because there's no way that CBRE can look after someone the way I'm going to look after them. You know, I've washed cars where it's so cold outside, the cars are freezing up, and I'm still out there washing the car. Like, you're just not doing that at CBRE. You're not behaving that way for a client. You really care and you give the attention and the detail. When you combine the two together, it's brilliant. So I think the education and the learning that you get from being at one of the big firms is brilliant. I strongly recommend it. But it doesn't mean it's for everyone. And when you take the best of both, boom,